Hi, my name is Max Campos, and my thesis is titled Just War and Government Image Management: Foreign Interventions with a Focus on the Impact of Changing U.S. Media Coverage. Dr. Gordon served as my mentor, and Dr. Dombrowski was my reader. To start out my paper, I begin by exploring how states go about justifying their war efforts. This is almost always done through just war doctrine and the United Nations Charter, and leaders really do this both to create claims of legitimacy at home, but also maintain support abroad. And my thesis that encapsulates changing US media coverage is that in an era of democratized information, authoritarian and democratic leaders carefully articulate foreign policy via the just war doctrine to maintain popular support at home and abroad. And more interestingly, that in democracies, public opinion is formed by news media and can be a precursor to foreign policy. And so I started looking at this through the framework of government image management, which is a theory that scholars use to understand why governments and why leaders act the way that they do. And so the traditional idea behind this theory is that governments choose a response strategy, which helps create government image. And when government image and citizens' values come together, this creates political support or the lack thereof. I'll get to this a bit later in my presentation, but I think modern media coverage and also social networks have upended this paradigm to create a new framework. So through these three different case studies, I looked into how US media covers war. I started out with World War II, which is where there was coordinated effort both between the US government and news media, and also unofficial decisions to censor by news media and journalists that helped boost public morale about the war and made it so that Americans only saw a filtered version of the war effort. This all changed with the Vietnam War, which is colloquially known as the First Living Room War, because footage was aired directly on news channels from the front lines, and there wasn't this coordinated effort between the government and the media to maintain public support for the war. And the most recent example of this is the Afghanistan War, which is where cable news channels reported of a lack of progress, and then also social media entered the scene, which created more complexity for the US government. And so the main takeaway from these three case studies is that there is a new image management framework. So remember earlier I talked about how response strategies influence government image, which would help create political willpower. I think it is now the opposite. The government is becoming takers of a narrative that's created by media reporting, which influences both government image and citizens' values, which comes together to create political willpower or the lack thereof for any foreign policy or war effort decisions by US leaders. And then once a leader analyzes whether or not there is political willpower, he or she will decide on what the response strategy will be. And so through all these case studies, I found that US leaders and authoritarian leaders do attempt to articulate their war effort through the international legal system, and that changing US media coverage has upended the traditional image management paradigm and made governments takers of the narrative and not makers of it.